Welcome back. Today, we need to talk about that incredible match last night. It was absolute tactical perfection on the field. That is what makes this game so special.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're actually going to deconstruct the impossible. We're diving deep into the tactical, psychological, and environmental factors that forge the absolute most legendary, seemingly impossible comebacks in sports history. I mean, have you ever watched a game where a team is just dead and buried, only to suddenly rise up and snatch a victory that completely defies all logic? It feels like magic, right? Well, as we'll see today, by breaking down the data, the tactics, and the dressing room psychology, it's actually a highly specific science.
Okay, so what is truly wild about this quote is the context. This wasn't spoken by Neymar while holding up a trophy or celebrating some massive win. Nope. He said this right after a crushing, absolutely humiliating 4-0 defeat to Paris Saint-Germain back in 2017. Most players would be making excuses or dodging the press entirely, but Neymar? He planted a flag. He set the psychological stage for something unbelievable. And that specific ratio, 1% chance, 99% faith, is the exact formula we're going to explore today.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Anatomy of a Miracle.
So a legendary comeback isn't just blind luck. It requires three very distinct ingredients. First up, you need the despair. You need a deep, terrifying valley, a massive, seemingly insurmountable deficit where literally everyone has written you off. Ironically, this lowers the pressure because you've got nothing left to lose. Second, the catalyst. You can't just wish your way back into a game. You need a concrete, tactical shift paired with an unwavering, almost irrational belief. And finally, the shift. This is when the physics of the game actually seem to change. It's pure, unstoppable momentum driven organically by the crowd and the players, just totally overwhelming the opponent.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Miracle of Istanbul.
To see this anatomy in action, let's look back at the 2005 Champions League final. Liverpool was down 3-0 against a fluid, unstoppable AC Milan team, a team boasting arguably one of the greatest starting 11s on paper in the history of the sport. The dressing room dichotomy at halftime, staggering. On the Milan side, they were relaxed, confident. Players could allegedly even be heard cheering in the dressing room, thinking the trophy was practically in the bag. Meanwhile, Liverpool was staring into the absolute abyss of humiliation. But instead of folding, two things happen. They hear their fans passionately singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" through the stadium walls, giving them a massive emotional anchor, and their manager starts rapidly making tactical changes.
Manager Rafa Benitez brilliantly simplified the tactical shift to provide our second ingredient, the catalyst. He completely flipped the formation. He switched to a three-man backline, brought on defensive midfielder Didi Hamann specifically to neutralize Milan's superstar playmaker Kaká, and then pushed his captain Steven Gerrard further forward to attack. But tactically adjusting wasn't the whole story. Benitez delivered a crucial message. He didn't preach damage limitation. He looked at his players and said, "You have to go for it. Try to score early. Get back in the game."
And man, talk about a shift. Let's look at the timeline, because this is where the momentum goes completely off the rails. Check out these timestamps. 54 minutes, Gerrard scores with a looping header. 56 minutes, Smicer hits a low drive. 60 minutes, Xabi Alonso scores off a penalty rebound. Once the tactics locked in and that first goal gave them just a sliver of hope, the momentum was completely absurd. Liverpool literally erased a massive 3-goal deficit against the best defense in Europe in just 6 chaotic minutes. Milan was absolutely paralyzed.
Which brings us to Section 3, the psychology of pressure.
We've seen how momentum can move mountains, but here's the catch. Understanding momentum means recognizing that psychological pressure has to be totally organic. When you try to force it, it can disastrously backfire. Just 4 years after Istanbul, that exact same manager, Rafa Benitez, tried to manufacture psychological warfare. It was 2009. Liverpool was in a razor-thin title race against Sir Alex Ferguson's Manchester United. Benitez sat down in a press conference, literally pulled out a piece of paper, and delivered his infamous facts rant listing grievances about referees and scheduling. He was trying to artificially force the pressure onto United.
But, well, look at the fallout. Instead of creating that organic, stadium-driven momentum we saw in Istanbul, the forced mind games totally backfired. It just transferred the anxiety straight to his own players. Liverpool immediately went out and drew 0-0 against Stoke City, looking super tense and flat, while Manchester United calmly went out and beat Chelsea 3-0. Liverpool lost their edge, and ultimately they lost the title race. You just cannot manufacture a miracle in a press room.
All right, on to Section 4, La Remontada,
the setup. This shows that true miracles require organic belief, forged in the fires of actual gameplay. And that perfectly sets the stage for our ultimate case study, Barcelona versus Paris Saint-Germain back in 2017. Going into the second leg, Barcelona faced a devastating 4-0 deficit from the first match in Paris. The entire football world was asking one question: how do you overcome a 4-0 deficit? PSG's squad was incredibly talented, and mathematically, the odds were effectively zero.
But remember our anatomy? We need a catalyst. So look at how Barcelona's manager Luis Enrique adapted. He essentially threw away their standard playbook and implemented a highly aggressive 3-4-3 diamond system. He stationed his wingers, Neymar and Rafinha, extremely wide, hugging the touchlines, to physically stretch PSG's defensive block. This bold move allowed Lionel Messi to drift inside and play right at the tip of the diamond as a central playmaker. It was an all-out, high-stakes attacking gamble.
The mental contrast between the two teams at this point is just staggering. On one side, we have PSG. Despite holding a massive lead, sources say their dressing room was dead silent. Players were literally staring at the floor, totally paralyzed by the fear of historical humiliation. On the other side, Luis Enrique was delivering a legendary prophetic speech to his Barcelona players at halftime. He planted a seed in their minds, telling them, "Boys, even if there are only 5 minutes left, you'll still be able to score 3 goals. Remember that line, because it's going to become incredibly important."
Let's move to Section 5, 6 goals, 1%. Let's step out of the dressing room, onto the pitch, and see how this intense belief collided with paralyzing fear in the match's defining moments. Talk about a roller coaster. Look at how this played out. Barcelona comes out like a house on fire. 3rd minute, Luis Suarez scores a scrappy header. The Camp Nou roars. 40 minutes, Andreas Iniesta forces a panicky own goal. 50 minutes, Messi blasts a penalty. It's 3-0. The miracle is literally happening. But then, the 62nd minute, PSG's Edinson Cavani steps up and unleashes a ferocious volley into the top corner. 3-1. The Camp Nou goes completely dead silent. The miracle, it seemed, was instantly killed.
So here's where the math gets brutal. Because PSG scored an away goal in Barcelona, it meant a tied aggregate score would actually favor the French side. Barcelona didn't just need 1 goal to force extra time anymore. They were suddenly tasked with scoring 3 more goals with the clock rapidly ticking down. Everyone thought it was over. The PSG fans were already celebrating.
But remember Enrique's exact prophecy? Even if there are only 5 minutes left. Well, at the 88th minute, Neymar steps up to a free kick and curls it perfectly into the top corner. 4-1. In the 91st minute, Suarez goes down, Neymar takes the penalty and sends the keeper the wrong way. 5-1. And then the absolute climax. In the 95th minute, the literal dying seconds of stoppage time. Neymar cuts inside, chips a desperate ball into the box, and substitute Sergi Roberto stretches out his leg to volley it home. 6-1. The stadium literally registered a micro-earthquake. Barcelona advanced 6-5 on aggregate. Absolutely unreal.
Finally, Section 6, the 99% legacy.
The psychological shockwaves of this match literally reshaped the mindset of modern football. It proved that in the face of impossible odds, the human element, belief, momentum, sheer terror can override any tactical setup in the world. The aftermath was seismic. For PSG, the humiliation instigated a massive, expensive overhaul by their ownership, fundamentally changing the trajectory of their club as they tried to buy their way out of that trauma. But for Barcelona, it proved the ultimate value of their psychological tactics. By breaking an impossible mountain down, goal by goal, they achieved the impossible. And Neymar's quote, that 1% chance slogan, became deeply embedded into the very DNA of the club's culture.
And honestly, that legacy is so incredibly strong that it echoes years later. Fast forward to today, in 2026, facing another tough deficit in the Copa del Rey against a gritty Atletico Madrid side. A completely new generation of Barcelona players, stars like Rafinha and teenager Lamine Yamal, are taking to social media to invoke that exact same slogan. They're literally using the ghost of 2017 to organically rally their fans, trying to summon that 12th man to create a brand new miracle.
Which leaves us with this final, kind of fascinating thought to take away from this explainer today. We've seen the tactics, we've seen the absolute despair, and we've analyzed the massive momentum shifts. But at the end of the day, when the data, the scoreline, and history itself all scream that a task is completely impossible, is 99% faith all you really need? Definitely something to think about next time you're facing your own insurmountable deficit. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and keep learning.
That is all for today. We need to talk about that incredible match last night. It was absolute tactical perfection on the field. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.